Disclaimer.
The system just broke. While you were sleeping, a massive $39 gap opened up between the East and the West. And it's about to trigger a global silver reset this Monday. Look at these numbers. Right now, in Shanghai, silver is trading at $123 an ounce. At the same time, here on the Comex, they're trying to tell us it's only $84. This isn't just a price difference anymore. It's a total decoupling of physical reality from paper manipulation. We have less than 48 hours before the markets open on Monday morning, and the pressure building behind this $39 arbitrage is enough to blow the Comex wide open. Today, I'm showing you exactly what's happening in China, why the Western paper market is dying, and what you must do before the reset starts. This is the final countdown. Let's dive into the data. Friday, January 30th, will go down as the day the silver market broke in half. While you were finishing your work week, something happened in our financial system that wasn't supposed to be possible. In just 4 hours of trading, silver prices on the Comex exchange crashed 27%, plummeting from $123 per ounce down to $84. That's the largest single-day collapse in the entire history of silver trading, dwarfing even the Hunt brothers' panic in 1980 when prices fell 22% over several days. But here's what should immediately grab your attention. While Comex showed silver at $84, physical silver in Shanghai was still trading at $123 per ounce. That $39 gap isn't a temporary glitch or a delay in price updates. It's a fundamental disconnect that reveals something massive happening beneath the surface of our precious metals markets. Think about what this means for a moment. You could theoretically buy silver on the Comex for $84 and immediately sell it in Shanghai for $123, pocketing a 46% profit in seconds. That kind of arbitrage opportunity simply doesn't exist in functioning markets. When you see price differences that extreme between exchanges, it means one of those prices is completely wrong, or more accurately, one of those markets can't actually deliver the physical metal at the price it's quoting. The signs of stress had been building for weeks, but most of us missed them. Between December 26th and January 31st, the CME raised margin requirements on silver futures 3 separate times. According to CME group data, these increases totaled over 50%, meaning traders now need more than half, again as much cash in their accounts, to hold the same positions they had in December. Exchanges don't do this casually. Margin hikes are the fire alarm of the futures world, and 3 of them in 5 days means someone is watching a building burn. What prompted this panic? The registered inventory at Comex, which represents the actual physical silver available for immediate delivery, has collapsed to just 30 million ounces. Now, if you're not familiar with futures markets, let me put this in perspective. The March 2026 silver contract, which is the next major delivery month, currently has open interest representing 125,000 contracts. Each contract represents 5,000 ounces of silver. Do the math with me here. That's 625 million ounces of silver that could potentially be demanded for delivery. But Comex only has 30 million ounces of registered inventory available to deliver. That means the exchange can only cover 24% of the open interest for just the March contract alone. First notice day, when buyers can start demanding physical delivery, hits on February 27th. We're now 28 days away from a moment when the largest silver exchange in the Western world may not have enough metal to fulfill contracts it sold. Have you noticed something strange about silver prices over the past decade? While industrial demand has skyrocketed with solar panels, electric vehicles, and 5G infrastructure consuming record amounts of the metal, prices haven't reflected this reality. That's because the price you see quoted isn't determined by physical supply and demand anymore. It's determined by paper contracts traded on exchanges like Comex, where banks and hedge funds can create unlimited synthetic supply with the stroke of a keyboard. China saw this vulnerability and made a calculated move. On January 1st, 2026, they implemented a new export licensing system for refined silver. According to industry reports from Asian Metal and Shanghai Metals Market, this system restricts 60 to 70% of the world's refined silver supply to just 44 approved companies. If you're a Western buyer trying to secure physical silver from Chinese refineries, you're now competing for scraps from a dramatically reduced pool of available metal. The impact was immediate and brutal. Physical premiums in Shanghai, which represent the extra cost above the Comex spot price that buyers pay for actual metal, exploded to $15 to $20 per ounce. Before this licensing system, Shanghai premiums typically ran $2 to $3 over Comex. This 5-fold increase tells you everything about the desperation of physical buyers in Asia who can't get metal anywhere else. Here's where the story gets personal for American investors. You might have silver coins in a safe at home, or shares of a silver ETF in your retirement account, or even silver futures contracts you bought thinking you were getting exposure to a precious metal. The question you need to ask yourself right now is this: do you actually own silver, or do you own a promise that someone will give you silver at some theoretical future price? The Friday crash wasn't random chaos. According to futures market data, massive liquidations hit the market in waves between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Leveraged positions that had been built up over months got wiped out in minutes as prices fell so fast that stop-loss orders couldn't execute at their intended levels. Traders who thought they were protected by risk management watched their accounts evaporate because the market simply blew through their safety triggers. But while Western traders were getting annihilated, something fascinating happened in Asia. Physical buyers in Shanghai, India, and Dubai didn't panic and sell. They held steady at prices between $110 and $125 per ounce. This tells you who actually understands what's happening. The people with real silver in their hands aren't selling. The people holding paper contracts are the ones running for the exits. Let me walk you through what led to Friday's breaking point. In mid-January, according to Comex warehouse data, 33.45 million ounces of silver were physically withdrawn from registered inventory in just 7 trading days. That's 26% of the available deliverable silver vanishing in less than 2 weeks. Someone, or more likely several major institutions, decided they needed physical metal in their possession, rather than warehouse receipts promising future delivery. Each withdrawal puts more pressure on an already stressed system. When registered inventory drops, the exchange has fewer ounces available to deliver against the massive open interest in futures contracts. This forces margin increases to reduce speculation and prevent a delivery crisis. But margin increases accelerate the exodus because traders who can't meet the new requirements have to liquidate positions, which pushes prices down, which triggers more margin calls, which forces more liquidation. You're watching a death spiral play out in real time. The Western paper market built a fantasy world where silver could trade at $84, while physical buyers in Asia were paying $123 for the same metal. That fantasy survived as long as most futures contracts got rolled forward or cash settled rather than demanding actual delivery. But now we've reached the point where the math simply doesn't work anymore. The $39 gap between Shanghai and Comex isn't a pricing error. It's the market's way of screaming that the emperor has no clothes. One of these prices represents actual physical silver changing hands between real buyers and sellers. The other represents a paper game that's running out of metal to back up its promises. Monday morning, February 3rd, global markets open with this unprecedented disconnect still in place. Physical buyers in Asia are not lowering their bids. They know what they're holding is real. Meanwhile, Comex traders are staring at a March contract that demands delivery in 28 days with only a fraction of the metal needed to satisfy potential delivery requests. This isn't a temporary dislocation that will resolve itself over a long weekend. This is the moment when our two-tier market, where paper prices and physical reality existed in separate universes, finally collided. And when that collision happens in commodity markets, paper always loses to physical reality, always. Now, let me show you the hard data that proves this isn't speculation or conspiracy theory. These are verifiable facts from exchange records, corporate filings, and official market reports that paint an undeniable picture of a system in complete breakdown. According to the CME's own publicly available data, the paper-to-physical ratio in silver futures hit 356 to 1 in December 2025. Think about what that number actually means. For every single ounce of actual physical silver sitting in Comex warehouses, there were 356 ounces worth of paper claims trading on the exchange. You're looking at a leverage ratio that would make even the most reckless mortgage lender from 2008 blush. This isn't how commodity markets are supposed to function. Futures contracts exist to help miners hedge production risk and allow industrial users to lock in prices for future delivery. But when paper claims outnumber physical metal by more than 300 to 1, you're not running a commodity market anymore. You're running a casino where the chips aren't backed by anything real, and everyone's betting the music will never stop. The music stopped in mid-January. Between January 13th and January 23rd, Comex warehouse data shows 33.45 million ounces of registered silver were physically withdrawn in just 7 trading days. That represents 26% of the entire deliverable inventory, vanishing in less than 2 weeks. Someone decided they needed actual metal in their possession, not warehouse receipts or electronic entries in an account. Here's what makes those withdrawals so significant. When you withdraw registered silver from Comex, you're not just moving it to a different warehouse. You're removing it from the pool of metal available for delivery against futures contracts. Every ounce that leaves registered inventory makes it harder for the exchange to fulfill its obligations when contract holders demand physical delivery instead of cash settlement. Pop quiz: what happens when institutional players realize the exchange might not have enough metal to deliver? They accelerate their own withdrawals, creating a bank run in slow motion. Each entity that pulls metal out increases the pressure on everyone else to do the same before the vault runs dry. We saw this exact dynamic play out in January, and it's still accelerating. But the most telling evidence comes from what the big players are doing when they think nobody's watching. In October 2025, Samsung Electronics signed a deal that should have made front-page financial news but barely registered in mainstream media. According to the filing with Mexican mining authorities and confirmed by First Majestic Silver Corp., Samsung secured exclusive rights to 100% of the La Parrilla mine as silver output for the next 2 years. Let me emphasize what exclusive means here. Samsung paid $7 million up front to lock down every single ounce of silver this mine produces through 2027. They're not buying futures contracts. They're not relying on Comex pricing. They're going directly to the source and securing physical metal before it ever reaches an exchange. The drilling and expanded production started in January 2026, meaning Samsung will receive the first deliveries soon, while the rest of the market fights over shrinking Comex inventory. Why would a technology giant bypass the entire futures market system and pay a premium to lock in mine supply 2 years in advance? Because Samsung's engineers know exactly how much silver goes into every smartphone, every semiconductor chip, every electric vehicle component their factories produce. And their procurement teams clearly concluded they couldn't rely on spot markets or exchanges to provide the physical metal they need at any price. Samsung isn't alone. According to industry sources cited by Metals Focus and CRU Group, Tesla and other major tech manufacturers have been negotiating similar direct supply agreements with primary producers throughout 2025. These companies are looking at their production forecasts for electric vehicles, solar installations, and advanced electronics, then doing the math on available silver supply and making the rational decision to secure physical metal outside traditional market channels. This is institutional panic dressed up in corporate jargon and buried in quarterly filings. When the world's largest technology companies abandon established commodity markets to lock in direct mine supply, they are sending a clear signal. They don't trust the paper market to deliver physical metal when they need it. The evidence isn't limited to corporate behavior. Physical silver markets around the world are screaming the same message. On January 1st, 2026, when Comex was quoting silver at $72 per ounce, physical dealers in Dubai were selling 1-ounce coins and bars at $130. That's an 80% premium over the supposed spot price. From the world's largest silver exchange, you might think that's just Dubai being an expensive market with wealthy buyers. But Japan showed similar disconnects. According to data from Tanaka Precious Metals and the Japan Bullion Market Association, physical silver in Tokyo was trading at $125 to $130 per ounce throughout early January, while Comex fluctuated between $70 and $80. Indian dealers were quoting $115 to $120 for immediate delivery of physical bars. Here's the critical question. If you could really buy silver at $72 on Comex and sell it for $130 in Dubai, why wasn't every arbitrage trader in the world doing exactly that? The answer is simple and devastating. You can't actually get physical silver from Comex at the quoted price. The paper price and the physical reality have completely separated. Even London, the traditional heart of precious metals trading, couldn't maintain the fiction anymore. The London bullion market went into backwardation in late December, meaning spot prices were higher than future delivery prices. According to data from the London Bullion Market Association, lease rates for physical silver spiked to 7 to 8% as banks and dealers struggled to source metal for immediate delivery. In normal markets, backwardation shouldn't exist for any significant period because traders would simply buy the cheaper future contracts and sell the more expensive spot metal until prices realigned. But when backwardation persists, it tells you that nobody who actually has physical metal is willing to sell it at future prices because they don't believe they'll be able to replace it later. Think about lease rates for a moment. When you lease silver, you're essentially borrowing physical metal and paying interest. Normal silver lease rates run around 0.5% to 1% annually. When rates jump to 7 or 8%, that's the market's way of saying physical metal has become incredibly scarce and valuable. Owners are demanding massive premiums just to temporarily part with their silver, even with the guarantee they'll get it back. The arbitrage that should connect these markets has completely failed. On paper, you should be able to buy Comex futures, take delivery, ship the metal to Asia, and profit from the price difference. But here's what actually happens when you try. First, you discover that taking delivery from Comex requires navigating a maze of warehouse fees, withdrawal delays, and documentation requirements that can take weeks. Then you find that approved Comex warehouses are running low on available metal and prioritizing existing clients. Finally, you learn that shipping physical silver internationally requires export licenses, insurance, secure logistics, and weeks of transit time. By the time you actually get metal into Asian markets, assuming you can navigate all those hurdles, the price spread has either disappeared or the local markets have moved even higher. This is why arbitrage isn't working. The friction and delays built into the system mean paper prices and physical prices can drift apart for extended periods without traders being able to profit from the gap. What you're witnessing is the fundamental breakdown of price discovery. For decades, Comex served as the global benchmark for silver prices because it was liquid, transparent, and reasonably reliable for both hedging and physical delivery. But when an exchange can only deliver a quarter of the metal represented by open interest in its primary contract month, it's no longer a functioning market. It's a pricing fiction maintained by traders who hope they can exit their positions before the music stops. The data doesn't lie. 356 ounces of paper claims per ounce of physical metal, 33 million ounces withdrawn in 7 days, Samsung locking direct mine supply, Dubai trading at 80% premiums, London in backwardation with lease rates at 7%. Every single one of these facts points to the same conclusion. The Western paper market can no longer credibly set silver prices because it can't deliver physical metal at the prices it quotes. And here's what should terrify anyone holding paper-silver positions. All of this evidence comes from before Friday's crash. The stress fractures were already visible throughout December and January. The $39 gap between Shanghai and Comex isn't the cause of the crisis. It's the symptom of a system that was already broken, finally revealing itself to everyone paying attention. Now, let me show you why Monday isn't just another trading day. It's the beginning of a reset that becomes mathematically inevitable once you understand the numbers. This isn't speculation about what might happen. This is arithmetic showing what must happen. The March 2026 silver futures contract currently has open interest representing 125,000 contracts. Each contract equals 5,000 ounces of silver. That is 625 million ounces of potential delivery demands when this contract reaches first notice day on February 27th. We're now 28 days away from that moment. Comex registered inventory, the metal actually available for immediate delivery against these contracts, currently stands at 30 million ounces. Let me repeat that so the impossibility sinks in. 625 million ounces of potential delivery obligations, backed by 30 million ounces of available metal. The exchange can cover less than 5% of the open interest in its primary contract month. You don't need an advanced degree in mathematics to see where this leads, even if we assume that most contract holders will roll forward to later months or accept cash settlement instead of demanding physical delivery. The numbers still don't work. Historically, about 20 to 30% of open interest in major contract months requests actual delivery. 20% of 625 million ounces equals 125 million ounces. Comex has 30 million. What happens when an exchange can't deliver the physical commodity it promised? You get one of three outcomes, and none of them are good for paper markets. First option, the exchange forces cash settlement on contract holders who wanted physical delivery, paying them the spot price instead of actual metal. This destroys confidence in the futures market because contracts become worthless as hedging tools if the exchange can simply decide not to deliver. Second option, prices spike dramatically higher to attract physical metal from other sources and reduce delivery demand. But here's the problem with that scenario. Where does the metal come from? We've already seen that physical markets in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe are trading at massive premiums to Comex. If Comex prices jump to $120 or $130 to match physical markets, they're admitting their previous quotes were fiction, which destroys their credibility as the global price setter. Third option, the market restructures completely, with Comex becoming irrelevant for price discovery as physical buyers and sellers migrate to exchanges and markets that can actually deliver metal. This is what's already happening, and Monday accelerates that transition. Think about the timing here. First notice day is February 27th, but the real pressure starts building well before that date. Traders who intend to stand for delivery typically make that decision 2 to 3 weeks in advance. By mid-February, Comex will have clear visibility into how many contract holders plan to demand physical metal versus rolling or settling for cash. If that number approaches or exceeds registered inventory, you'll see emergency measures, additional margin hikes, limit moves, trading halts, potential force majeure declarations. But the mathematical impossibility goes deeper than just the March contract. This isn't a temporary shortage that resolves itself in a few months. According to the Silver Institute's World Silver Survey and data compiled by Metals Focus, the global silver market ran a structural deficit of 148.9 million ounces in 2024 alone. That means industrial demand, investment demand, and jewelry consumption exceeded mine production by nearly 150 million ounces in a single year. Over the past 4 years, from 2021 through 2024, cumulative deficits total 678 million ounces. Where did that silver come from? It came from above-ground inventories, recycling, and government stockpiles built up over decades. But those sources are finite and dwindling. Exchange inventories across Comex, London, and Shanghai have been falling steadily. Recycling can't make up the gap because much of the silver used in industrial applications like solar panels and electronics is effectively destroyed or too expensive to recover. Here's where the supply situation becomes truly dire. Roughly 70% of newly mined silver comes as a byproduct from copper, zinc, lead, and gold mining operations. According to S&P Global Market Intelligence and data from primary mining companies, these mines don't increase silver production just because silver prices rise. They're optimizing for their primary metal. A copper mine aren't going to expand operations because silver hit $150 per ounce if copper prices don't justify the investment. This means the normal supply response you'd expect in commodity markets, where higher prices incentivize more production, simply doesn't work for silver. Even if silver prices double or triple from here, you won't see a meaningful supply response from byproduct sources. And primary silver mines, where silver is the main product rather than a byproduct, represent such a small portion of global supply that even if every single one ramped to maximum capacity, they couldn't close the deficit. What about new mines? Surely high prices would justify developing new silver deposits. Here's the brutal reality according to mining industry analysis from Wood Mackenzie and S&P Global. From initial discovery to commercial production, a new silver mine requires 7 to 10 years minimum. That includes exploration, permitting, environmental reviews, financing, construction, and ramp up to full production. Some projects take even longer depending on location and regulatory environment. This locks us into current supply constraints until at least 2033 to 2036, regardless of what happens to prices. The deficit we're experiencing right now cannot be solved by bringing new mines online because those mines don't exist yet. They're still in the exploration or early permitting phases, years away from producing a single ounce of silver. We're living through a supply crisis with no solution available on any time frame that matters to current market dynamics. Now combine that supply reality with what's happening on the demand side. According to the Silver Institute and CRU group analysis, industrial demand for silver continues accelerating. Solar panel installations globally are projected to consume over 200 million ounces annually by 2027. Electric vehicle production requires significantly more silver per vehicle than traditional cars due to electric motors, battery systems, and electronic components. The build-out of 5G infrastructure, data centers, and advanced electronics adds additional structural demand that won't disappear even in economic downturns. You're looking at a market where demand is growing faster than supply can possibly respond. Existing inventories are depleting, and the futures market that's supposed to help manage this imbalance has lost the ability to deliver physical metal. What happens next isn't a mystery. Physical markets decouple entirely from paper markets, and real prices get set by whoever controls actual physical inventory. That brings us to Monday, February 3rd, and why this weekend marks the point of no return. Friday's 27% crash was the paper market's death throes. Leveraged positions built up over months got liquidated in hours as margin calls forced selling, regardless of where traders thought fair value should be. The cascade fed on itself as each wave of selling triggered more margin calls and more forced liquidation. But pay close attention to what didn't happen during that crash. Physical buyers in Shanghai, Mumbai, Tokyo, and Dubai didn't panic. According to quotes from dealers and reports from Shanghai Metals Market, physical markets in Asia held steady between $110 and $125 per ounce, while Comex was imploding down to $84. Think about the confidence that requires. While Western paper traders were running for the exits, physical buyers with actual metal in their possession weren't even tempted to sell into that panic. They understand something that paper traders are just beginning to learn. If you hold physical silver, you own real industrial metal that manufacturers desperately need and can't source elsewhere. If you hold paper claims to silver through futures contracts or ETFs, you own a promise from a system that's running out of metal to deliver on its promises. One of these assets has intrinsic value. The other has counterparty risk. Monday morning opens with this knowledge now visible to everyone. The $39 gap between physical and paper markets is not going to close by Comex rising to meet Shanghai. We've already seen that play out. Instead, what you're about to witness is the creation of a permanent two-tier market structure. Comex and Western paper exchanges become increasingly irrelevant for price discovery because they can't deliver physical metal in meaningful quantities. Meanwhile, physical markets in Asia, where the metal actually exists, become the new price setters for global silver. China holds the winning hand here, and they know it. By restricting 60 to 70% of global refined silver supply through their January 1st export licensing system, they've effectively captured control of the physical market. Those 44 approved companies that can export Chinese refined silver aren't going to sell at Comex paper prices when Shanghai physical buyers will pay $20, $30, or $40 more per ounce. According to data from the China Non-Ferrous Metals Industry Association and Shanghai Metals Market, China refined approximately 530 million ounces of silver in 2024, representing nearly 60% of global refining capacity. When you control that much of the physical supply chain, you set the terms. Western buyers who want Chinese silver now have to accept Chinese pricing, Chinese payment terms, and Chinese delivery schedules. The days of Comex quotes dictating global prices are over. Here's what this means for you personally, whether you own silver or not. If you hold physical coins or bars, you're positioned correctly. Your metal will track the physical markets in Shanghai and Asia, not the dying paper markets in the West. You'll see the value of your holdings reflect real supply and demand rather than leveraged paper trading. If you own silver ETFs, you need to read the fine print of your prospectus immediately. Many silver ETFs explicitly state they may settle in cash rather than physical delivery if they can't source metal. When the underlying futures markets can't deliver physical silver, your ETF shares become claims on a system that's breaking down. Some ETFs are better than others in terms of allocated physical storage, but you need to verify exactly what you own. If you're trading silver futures or options, understand that you're playing in a market that's losing its connection to physical reality. The gap between paper and physical isn't temporary. It's structural and accelerating. Paper markets can stay disconnected from physical markets far longer than most traders expect, especially when exchanges implement emergency measures like trading limits, forced liquidation, or cash settlement rules. For Americans who don't own any silver, this reset still affects you. Silver is a critical industrial metal embedded in electronics, solar energy, medical devices, and countless other products that touch your daily life. When physical silver prices disconnect upward from paper prices, those costs flow through to manufacturers, who pass them along to consumers. The solar panels that might go on your roof, the smartphone you're planning to upgrade, the medical equipment your hospital uses, all of these contain silver, and all of them become more expensive when physical metal becomes scarce. The broader message here transcends silver markets. What you're witnessing is what happens when paper claims backed by leverage and promises finally collide with physical reality and mathematical limits. For years, futures markets created synthetic supply through contracts that outnumbered physical metal by hundreds to one. That system worked as long as most participants were content to trade paper and settle in cash. But when enough participants demand physical delivery, the illusion shatters. We're now 28 days from the March contract's first notice day, watching a $39 gap between paper and physical markets, knowing that Comex has less than 5% of the metal needed to satisfy potential delivery demands. The math has become impossible. The reset has already started. Monday just makes it official. This isn't the end of silver markets. It's the end of silver markets as we knew them. Physical metal with real utility and genuine scarcity will find its proper value in markets where delivery is actually possible. Paper claims to silver will trade at discounts that reflect the growing likelihood they will be cash settled rather than delivered in metal. And price discovery will migrate from Western exchanges that see and deliver to Asian markets that control the physical supply. The system just broke, the gap just opened. And the reset starts Monday. Now you know exactly why. Bottom line, the $39 gap between Shanghai and New York isn't a mistake. It's the end of the road for a paper price manipulation. For years, they told us the Comex was the only price that mattered. Now, at $123 an ounce, China is proving them wrong in real time. We are heading into a massive Monday reset. Whether the Comex collapses or is forced to chase the physical reality in the East, one thing is certain. Those holding physical silver are the only ones protected from this systemic break. I'll be watching the markets open like a hawk. If this $39 margin shifts, or if we see a total freeze in paper trading, I'll be the first to let you know. What is your exit price? Will you sell if the Comex hits $100? Or are you holding until the paper system is completely gone? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you found this data helpful, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Don't miss my emergency update on Monday morning. Stay physical, stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.